Welcome to Make Your Money Matter with Brad Barrett, the show that aims to change the way you think about wealth management. Brad is a financial advisor, established radio host, and author of Retire Right. He is a managing director and partner at One Capital Management, an SEC-registered investment advisory firm managing over $4 billion for clients across the nation. Brad and his team are dedicated to helping clients protect and preserve their assets so they can reach their investment and retirement goals. And now, your host of Make Your Money Matter, Brad Barrett.
Welcome to the Make Your Money Matter show. I'm your host, Brad Barrett. I'm also a managing director and partner here at One Capital Management. Friends, today on the show, we're going to talk about a recession. I know I've been talking about it a lot, but it's important because as I meet with clients, as I'm out there doing speeches and conversations and on our radio shows, I want to share something that I see on Main Street, all of us, you and I, and how we relate to what a recession is and what it means for our money, what it means for our portfolio. And I thought today I would take a deep dive back into economic theory. I'm going to talk about the Austrian thought and theories. And I'm going to talk about the Keynesian thoughts and theories, all items I learned while getting my economics degree. And I'm going to bring that to some Main Street conversations that we're having today, likely some things you've been thinking of around your mortgage rates. And hey, the rates are going up. That must mean it's going to stall the economy. And I'm going to dissect that a little bit because I think it's important to put some context around some of the things that we think are true as it relates to a recession. But before we get started, make sure to go to our website and you can click on the media tab and there you can download our podcast. You can go to onecapital.com, click on the media tab. You can download the Make Your Money Matter show. You can also download the podcast on any other platform, whether that's Google Podcasts, the Apple iTunes app on your phone, or Spotify or SoundCloud. And as I always ask in the onstart of the show here, leave us a review, give us a comment. It helps us share our content with the world. And so I do appreciate that. But with that, let's get started. You know, as I'm sitting here writing and thinking about talking about a subject matter of recession, and I know I've talked about some data points in the past, and again, I've shared it with as it relates to your portfolios and different things if you're a client listening, but I'd be remiss not to bring up something that I recall learning in economic school, and obviously, for many of you know, I'm a huge Reagan fan, and you know, in his Liberty State Park address on the 1st of September, I believe it was, 1980, he'd said this, and we all know this quote, right? A recession is when your neighbor loses his job. A depression is when you lose yours. And a recovery is when Jimmy Carter loses his. Now, at that time, we have to go back and realize what was going on in the 70s under Jimmy Carter and what basically, at that time, President Reagan was campaigning on. And I bring that up simply to say that we've been talking a lot about inflation numbers. We've been talking a lot about mortgage rates, some of the stuff we're going to get into today. You know, we relate that, if you think, a lot about that about the last 40 years, because that's the last time we saw inflation as, you know, getting up to where it is. It's the last time we saw mortgage rates. You know, we're nowhere near the mortgage rates of the 70s and 80s, but creeping back up. So our minds immediately go back to that point. Now, arguably so, we're nowhere near that, as I mentioned, but I think it's really important to understand contextual theory here. And I also want to bring up some theories here as it relates to a recession. Now, mind you, in that same address, in the Liberty State Park address in 1980, is the same comment that he made, which we all know as well, which is freedom is never more than one generation away from extinction. And I think it's important for all of us to remind ourselves that what we do today matters for tomorrow. What we do today matters for our generation next. And that is the same, whether it's defending our country, offering up our services to help others in need, as well as being good stewards of your money. And when I talk about theories, I want to talk about something as it relates to general economics. Now, I want to share something about myself. Before my career, in terms of education, I would say, in my 19 years of being in the financial services industry, my degree is in economics. And I chose economics simply because I love the idea that the base premise of all things that happen in an economy it boils down to supply and demand. And I share this simply to say because my education around my economics degree was before my CFP certification, before my series licenses to become a practicing financial advisor. And I want to bring us back to something I was thinking about as I was writing about this week's episode around a recession. And there's really two theories. I mean, there's a couple of them, but I want to bring up two to you that I learned in economic school. One is the Austrian school of thought, and the other is the Keynesian school of thought. Now, if you've heard of Keynesian before, John Maynard Keynes is widely known as one of the fathers of economics. And Keynesians believe that because prices are somewhat rigid, fluctuations in any component of spending, whether it's consumption, investment, or government expenditures, cause the output to change. Now, Austrian economist, that school of thought, holds that prices are determined by subjective factors like an individual's preference to buy or not buy a particular good. And I want to bring this up because I want to start this theory when it comes to how we would look at someone calling a recession. Understanding the thought process behind it, I think, is important for all of us. Point is I want to make here is Austrians are different than Keynesians, right? Austrians, boiled down, basically think that recessions are caused by government failure. That's what they think. While Keynesians, they think they're caused by market failure. Two very different schools of thoughts. And I'm going to bring up an example here. Think 2008, the financial panic, right? The question will be was it market failure and bad business models that caused that? Or was it using the government to subsidize housing plus the overall mark-to-market accounting? If you ask most economists, in my opinion, it's the latter. Without the subsidies and bad accounting rule, the recession might not have happened at all. Now, I digress. Why does this matter now? Why am I bringing this up to you? Whether or not you think a recession is coming, it largely will lie on the fact that the economy was artificially stimulated during COVID, during the pandemic, which we know about. We've all seen it. We know it was stimulated, okay? But at the same time, the M2, which is the money supply, the overall cash that's in our world, basically in the United States, also declined in the past year. So in addition to that, by essentially what we're doing is rewarding short-term cash, we had this inverted yield curve that'll eventually limit business investment and overall risk-taking in general. So these are the things that we here at One Capital are looking at as it relates to someone, describing it being a recession. And by the way, that someone is the NBER, the National Bureau of Economic Research.
Stay connected. Get frequent updates on the show. Follow Brad Barrett and Make Your Money Matter on most social media platforms. And catch full episodes of Make Your Money Matter streaming now on our YouTube channel. To schedule your no-obligation appointment, go to onecapital.com or call 805-410-5454.
Others on the main street, and this is what I've been hearing from clients, I've been kind of just the hubbub around the world, right, as I listen to and around our communities and relationships and our conversations, they'll argue that mortgage rates, along with credit card and loan rates, are so high right now that those that are taking out credit at these current higher rates will be squeezed enough to cause the spending to fall in other areas, like think discretionary, like you're spending so much on your mortgage or your loan rates or your credit card rates that you just can't spend anywhere else. And that will lead to a slowdown in the economy. And I want to share something with you from an economic perspective here, just to kind of add some, light to that, right? Because superficially, if you think about it, that theory might make some sense. Think back in a year or two ago, right? 2021, the median existing home at that time, sold for about $350,000, while at that same time, the typical 30-year fixed mortgage rate was near 3%. Friends, this wasn't that long ago. We know this, right? Now, if the buyer put 20% down, the principal and interest payment will be right around $1,180 per month in my simple calculation here. Now, currently, the median existing home sells for about $400,000, so it's gone up, while the typical mortgage rate is about 6.8%. As a result, a purchaser putting 20% down in my same mathematical scenario here faces a monthly payment of over $2,000. That's an increase of 77% of extra mortgage payments, or said differently, almost $11,000 per year, which, by the way, by and large, is a heavy, heavy lift for most households, no doubt. No wonder I think some analysts, and investors are concerned. That's why I want to address this. But I want to dig below the surface here for a second, because to me, and to a lot of economists out there, the argument has some serious problems. First and foremost, it's important to recognize that those extra mortgage payments, right, they don't disappear into some sort of economic black hole. The extra money is paid to the lender, who now has more purchasing power than they'd otherwise have. Friends, I'm going to get into a couple points here, but here's the theme of what I'm trying to share here. Your spending or someone else's spending is income to someone else. We have to track the flows. So again, these extra payments aren't just going to some economic black hole, they're going to the lender, and now they have more money to lend out or use. Secondly, if the extra payments were, let's say, accompanied by plummeting home prices, let's say that happened, right, and adjustable rates resetting higher, that could be a problem because, obviously some homeowners might strategically default, which would set off a bank problem, somewhat like what we saw in 2008, 2009. But home prices, if you look at it, aren't steeply declining. And actually, if you look at the economic forecast, are somewhat unlikely to do so. I mean, very few of the new homeowners with higher mortgage rates are going to find themselves underwater, right? Or with negative equity based on economic data we are seeing. And thirdly, while mortgage rates are up, consumers are earning more interest income on bank accounts or other investments. We've been seeing this lately. I've been sharing this a lot as it relates to your cash in particular. Get this stat I found. The annual rate of interest income for consumers, all of us, you and I, is up $121 billion, billion with a B, versus a year ago. And I think still others will argue that like student loan payments or gas prices or food prices will undermine consumer spending. I hear you. But once again, that spending is income to someone else. So adding all those things up, that may hurt some individuals, is really not how Austrians, I would say, forecast the economy. Government policy, if you think about it, if you look at overall matters here, government policy matters, and the massive stimulus and lockdowns during the pandemic, some of the biggest policy blunders maybe, we'll find out as history plays out in U.S. history, require a price to be paid. And we're seeing that with supply chain issues. We're seeing that with inflation over the past 12 to 18 months now, really. We're seeing that with mortgage rates as the Fed is basically trying to stave off higher and hyperinflation. But again, if a recession happens, let me share it this way. It's not the little things that are going to matter. It's the big things. That's what I want to share today. So I don't want anyone out there, planning a move or a not a move or mortgage rates or things like that based on real estate, thinking that, the recession may or may not happen. And if it does, it's going to tank a bunch of things. It's going to happen, in our opinion, largely because of the bigger things, not so much the smaller things. Yes, interest rates are up. Yes, mortgages are more expensive. Yes, yes, and yes. Food's up, gas is up. All is true. But remember, that higher prices is income to someone else, which is being used to, again, stimulate the economy. So it's that tug rope of making sure that the Fed is trying to, for all of us, and I have to give them some credit here a little bit, stave off hyperinflation so that we can control it. Now, I do think in September, hopefully they'll start pausing and we'll start being on the downside here of interest rates. But I wanted to share some background, I guess, in two things. One is there's different schools of thoughts out there. That's the main point here, right? There's the Austrian thought, there's the Keynesian thought, how these recessions derive or arrive, let's say. And I think it's important to know that there's, it's all subjective theory. And I wanted to share the background on that. And then I want to bring up the mortgages because I know I've been hearing that a lot. Yes, interest rates are up across the board. And so we're all thinking like that's going to become some catastrophic thing. It is to all of us as individuals, no doubt. It is. We're paying more. If you're buying a new home, if you need a new move or whatever it is, right, we're paying more. I would also say there's a lot of people that may want to move that are locked into a 3% and really just can't move. They just feel immobilized, right? Many of you out there I might be talking to might be in this camp. But the thing is, we have this weird conundrum going on where the house prices aren't really falling either. So we're having good equity in there, and you are paying a pretty cheap rate on a 30-year fixed long-term rate. So this is, I think, where always planning comes in. If you're thinking about things and you're strategizing about what if, there are theories to these what ifs, but they're theories. No one knows what tomorrow holds. If someone tells you they do, as I say often, please run, because they're crazy. The idea with planning is to be able to predict the things that we've seen in the past and know that the one certainty is we're going to see uncertainty. So the point of the matter is having a plan matters. And I know it's so boring to say, I get it, but where you're going with your money and the roadblocks and the weather and whatever analogy you want to use, it's going to throw you off course. It does matter as it relates to your overall trajectory for your money and any kind of money, whether that's investments in real estate, your IRA, your 401k, your retirement plans, however you look at things, even your debt payoffs. So how you look at things matter. And again, back to the strategy and theories here is even how economists look at things as it relates to something as big as a conversation as a recession. Hey, I want to thank you for listening to the Make Your Money Matter show. As always, remember, before acting on anything discussed today, speak with a financial advisor near you about your specific situation. Or again, if you'd like our help, you can reach us at 805-410-5454. And until next week, always remember to make your money matter.
The information in this show is educational and general in nature and does not take into consideration a listener's personal circumstances. Therefore, it is not intended to be a substitute for specific individualized financial, legal, or tax advice. To determine which strategies or investments may be suitable for you, consult the appropriate qualified professional prior to making a final decision.